When I proposed to Clara, the city felt suspended between winter and spring. Warm light, cold air, and 100 people cheering for something I thought was love. She said yes so fast the words sounded rehearsed. I didn't care. I thought joy was supposed to sound scripted. At the engagement party, I couldn't stop smiling. Every toast, every laugh, every flash from a camera felt like proof that all my years of late-night overtime had been worth it. Clara's hand fit neatly inside mine, her diamond catching the light like it belonged there. She looked at me and whispered, "We did it." Not, "I love you." Just, "We did it." I told myself it was nerves. When my mother hugged her, Clara's smile stiffened. Too polite, too polished. She looked at the room the way an investor studies a chart, measuring returns, not emotions. Still, I introduced her proudly to everyone. My fiancé. The word made me stand taller. That night, while we opened gifts, she stopped at an envelope from my uncle, the one who owned the family company. Inside was a handwritten card and a single line at the bottom. "Can't wait to welcome you into the family business." Clara's eyes lingered there longer than on the diamond ring. She asked casually, "So this means you're next in line, right?" I laughed. Next in line for what? Board meetings and migraines? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I just like knowing where we'll stand. We'll stand. Plural, but distant. Over the following weeks, she grew allergic to small talk that wasn't about the wedding venue or the guest list. When I tried to plan a honeymoon road trip, she waved her phone at me. "Let's just book the Maldives. We can post pictures that look serious." "Serious?" I asked. "You know, like a couple that has their life figured out." The way she said "figured out" sounded less like love and more like branding. I began to notice other small things. The way she calculated tips. The way she asked about my cousin Noah's promotion. The way her laughter always landed exactly half a second late, as if timed to seem effortless. One night I came home early from a meeting. She was in the study with the door slightly open, voice soft but sharp on the phone. "Once it's official," she said, "everything changes." Pause. A low murmur from the other side I couldn't make out. She chuckled. "No, he has no idea." "Ethan trusts me completely." My heart stopped mid-beat. I pressed my back to the wall, every instinct screaming to burst in and demand context. But my brain whispered the word stress. She was just overwhelmed. People say strange things when they're planning weddings. I told myself that 1,000 times. At dinner I acted normal, even cracked a joke about our disastrous catering tasting. She laughed, pouring more wine into my glass than usual, asking about work like nothing had happened. I answered like nothing had happened. That's how denial works. It sounds polite. Still, the sentence wouldn't leave my head. Once it's official, everything changes. What exactly would change? 2 days later, I overheard her telling my mother on the phone that she wanted to handle the legal paperwork herself, just to save Ethan the trouble. I nearly asked what she meant, but the thought of sounding paranoid stopped me. Maybe love is just one long argument between intuition and hope. The following weekend, I tried to test the water. We were driving back from a friend's bridal shower when I asked, "Would you still want to get married if I quit the company?" She blinked. "Why would you do that?" "Hypothetically." "Well, hypothetically," she said, tightening her grip on the steering wheel. "We'd have to rethink a few things." "You've built your entire future there." "Our future," I corrected gently. She didn't respond. That night, she claimed she was meeting a wedding planner for coffee. Halfway through a movie, I realized she'd left her tablet on the couch, still open to the map app. The pin wasn't at any planner's office. It was at a small cafe downtown, one I used to visit with Noah, my cousin. Something cold slid down my spine. I told myself again not to jump to conclusions, but my body had already decided for me. I grabbed my coat and drove there. Through the cafe window, I saw them. Noah sitting across from her, leaning forward. Clara's head slightly bowed, voice low. Between them lay a folder thick with papers. I watched her trace one page with her finger, her lips forming the words, "Inheritance papers." The rest blurred. My pulse drowned everything. For a second, I thought about walking in, flipping the table, demanding answers. But all I did was stand in the rain, watching the woman I planned to marry whisper about my family's fortune to someone who shared my blood. She laughed at something Noah said, light, effortless. The same laugh she used to give me. That was the moment the party lights, the diamond, the champagne applause, all of it collapsed into silence. Outside, the cafe window fogged with warmth, and I stood in the cold, realizing the engagement everyone celebrated might never have belonged to us at all. After that night at the cafe, I stopped sleeping properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's hand sliding a folder across the table toward Noah. Inheritance papers. The words replayed like a song stuck in static. For 2 days, I did nothing. Just watched her. Watched the small changes that only guilt could explain. She'd hide her phone when I entered the room. Delete entire chat threads before dinner. Her smile came a second too late. I started counting those seconds. 3, 4, sometimes 5. Love shouldn't need a stopwatch. One evening, she fell asleep on the couch after scrolling through Pinterest wedding boards. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed beside me. I hesitated for a long time. Snooping felt ugly, but the silence between us had already turned uglier. I opened her messages. The first few were harmless: friends, vendors, her bridesmaid. Then I found a thread titled Mom. I shouldn't have clicked, but I did. Mom. Remember, once the license is signed, we'll push for the property clause. He won't refuse. It's family. Clara. I know. I just need him to trust me till then. Mom. Don't get sentimental. The Ethan boy's decent, but he's still the key. Clara. Don't worry. After the wedding, everything changes. There it was again. Everything changes. I stared at the screen until the light dimmed. I didn't know what hurt more. The betrayal, or how calmly they discussed my life like it was a down payment. I put the phone back, careful not to wake her. She looked peaceful, face tilted toward the lamp glow, lashes fluttering with dreams I wasn't in. That was when something inside me quietly shifted. Not anger, clarity. I needed proof that what I'd read wasn't just paranoia twisted into words, so I waited. The next morning, I tested her the way you test the strength of glass, with pressure. Over breakfast, I said casually, "The company's restructuring next quarter. They're offering voluntary relocation packages. London office needs someone." Her spoon froze mid-air. "London? That's far." "Yeah," I said, pretending to stir my coffee. "But it's my decision. Might be good to start over. Independent. My own savings. My own path." Her laugh was tight, brittle. "Ethan, why would you do that? Everything you've built is here. Maybe I'm tired of being part of a legacy I didn't create, but your uncle's grooming you for succession. Walking away now would be irrational." That word stung. Irrational. Like wanting a clean life was a mistake. I leaned back. "So if I took the offer, you'd still marry me?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Of course, but what?" Her fingers trembled slightly against the tablecloth. "It's just, if you're giving up your position, what about..." She caught herself too late. "What about the company shares?" The words hung between us like smoke. My chest went cold. The question wasn't what about us, it was what about the shares? That's when I knew the truth wasn't hiding in her phone anymore. It was sitting right in front of me, staring at me through carefully painted lashes. I set my cup down quietly. "That's an interesting priority." She frowned. "Don't twist my words. I'm just thinking about our future." "Our future," I echoed softly. "Or your security." Her tone sharpened. "Ethan, stop being dramatic. You're reading too much into things." "Maybe," I said, standing up. "But you're saying too much for someone with nothing to hide." I left before the argument could spiral. On the drive to work, my reflection in the windshield looked like someone else. A man finally seeing the fine print in his own love story. That night, I went through every photo, every message, every note we'd ever exchanged. Her affection was all there. Hearts, emojis, promises. But looking closer, every "I love you" was followed by a question about travel budgets, bonuses, or gifts. The evidence wasn't just digital, it was emotional accounting. She'd been keeping ledgers the whole time. I started connecting dots backward. The expensive ring she insisted on, the sudden interest in my uncle's company history, the way she called our relationship a partnership instead of love. Even the way she always said, "We'll stand well" instead of "we'll be happy." Stand. Like a business deal standing on a clause. I realized love doesn't vanish. It gets diluted. One compromise at a time until what's left is polite manipulation. 2 days later, she tried to act normal again. Called me babe while scrolling through designer suit catalogs, asking which one would match her gown better. I watched her from the couch, my mind detached. "Whichever costs less," I said quietly. She laughed like it was a joke. "You're so frugal lately. Are you planning something I should know about?" "Yeah," I murmured. "Maybe I am." That night, I slipped the engagement ring from my finger and placed it on the nightstand between us. She didn't notice. It was dark, and she was too busy talking about wedding menus. I stared at that ring until the world blurred. The symbol that once meant promise now looked like a receipt. I didn't confront her that evening. Not yet. I wanted the truth to settle inside me first. Solid. Undeniable. By dawn, it did. When she stirred awake, sunlight brushed the ring's surface, scattering gold onto her skin. She turned, smiling sleepily. "Morning." Her voice used to sound like home. Now it sounded like interest accrued. She reached for my hand and paused when she realized the ring was gone. "Ethan?" I looked at her, really looked, and finally saw the calculation beneath the charm. "I think," I said quietly, "we need to talk about what this marriage means to you." She frowned, feigning confusion. "It means I love you, does it?" "Of course it does. Why else would I be here?" I almost laughed. Because love doesn't need paperwork. I walked to the window, watching morning light spill over the city she loved so much. The one she thought she'd own by marrying into. She followed, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Ethan, what's wrong? You've been so distant." I turned to face her, steady voice, no anger left. "Clara, would you still marry me if I lost everything tomorrow?" Her smile faltered. "Don't say things like that. You won't." "Answer the question." She hesitated, long enough for silence to answer for her. And that was it. The truth didn't explode. It settled, quiet and undeniable. I didn't need to shout or accuse. Her fear said it all. I brushed past her, heading for the door. She called after me, voice cracking. "Ethan, where are you going?" "Out," I said simply, "to figure out what's mine and what never was." As I closed the door, I caught sight of the ring glinting faintly on the nightstand, light bending across its surface like irony. That's when I realized she wasn't marrying me. She was buying security. The church smelled like white flowers and rehearsal nerves. Aisle runners lay like long, clean promises. Rows of chairs waited with polite, expectant faces on them. Outside, the sky had the soft gray of good photography. It would have been a perfect day to practice forever. Clara arrived radiant and 10 minutes late, as if she'd been poured into her dress by applause. Stylists trailed her like a comet tail, pinning and smoothing, whispering micro-adjustments, a veil angle, a curl placed to look unplaced. She kissed the air beside my cheek and said, "Ready?" in a voice that sounded like it had practiced sounding casual. I nodded. Calm had replaced whatever feeling used to live in my chest. It wasn't ice. It was clarity, cold only to those it excluded. Family trickled in for the run-through. My mother with a tissue already in hand, just in case. My uncle alert in the third pew, gaze flicking between me and the altar the way men watch stock tickers. Noah with his tie loosened, carrying a joke he hadn't decided whether to tell. Bridesmaids like pastel commas beside Clara's exclamation point. The coordinator clapped. "All right, we'll walk the sequence twice. Then vows practice, then recessional timing." Her smile was a switch that never turned off. "Positions!" The string quartet set down a neat, hopeful sound. Bridesmaids went 2 by 2. Groomsmen, 2 casual. I stood at the end of that paper-white aisle, hands folded, a polite statue in charcoal. Clara floated to the center like a swan that knew the entire lake was rented for her alone. When she reached me, she squeezed my fingers too tightly, a message written in pressure. "Smile. Don't think." I smiled. I thought, we practiced the vows, empty of names, full of placeholders. The coordinator said, "And here you two will exchange rings." She looked at me. "We'll mime it now." I felt the weight of metal in my pocket. The ring I'd taken off and then on again. The compromise shaped like a circle. I closed my fingers around it. It felt small. "Let's pause," I said. Heads turned. The string music thinned and fell. "Ethan?" Clara lifted her chin the way people do when they're about to perform kindness. "Is something wrong with the timing?" "No," I said. My voice carried without effort. I didn't need to raise it. The room made room for truth. Just, there's something we won't need to practice. A ripple moved through the pews. Murmurs have a temperature. This one was cool and curious. I stepped toward the podium, the one where, a day from now, a friend would have said warm, forgettable things about us. I rested my palms on the wood. It was smooth, lived in, made for vows and eulogies, two kinds of endings. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "I know this is a rehearsal, but it turns out I needed to rehearse something else. A different kind of honesty." Clara laughed the way you laugh to reset a room. "Ethan, we can talk details later." "This is a detail," I said gently, without looking at her. "It's the detail that makes a marriage a marriage." My mother's tissue halted mid-air. My uncle leaned forward, still as a held breath. The coordinator's smile dropped and hit the floor without sound. "I love simple sentences," I said to the room. "So I'll use one. I'm canceling the wedding." Silence isn't always quiet. Sometimes it hits like thunder felt through the chest. Clara's heels pivoted toward me. "Don't be ridiculous." She smiled at our families. The "watch how patient I am" smile. He gets dramatic when he's stressed. I turned to her. The calm held. "Clara," I said, "I'm not stressed. I'm clear." I reached into my pocket and lifted the ring. It flashed once and then settled. Not like a jewel, but like an answer. I held it between us. "I want to give this back to you before the ceremony gives it meaning it doesn't have." Her eyes thinned. "What is this, some test?" "Because if it is, you're failing it." "This isn't a test," I said. "It's a boundary." A whisper stitched down the pews. Boundary landed strangely among lilies and lace. I faced the room again. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. People make choices from fear. I've made my share. I let my gaze find my mother, then my uncle, then the small window of pale sky above the choir loft. But a vow has to be made by two people who want the same thing. I want a life. She wants security. Those aren't the same. Clara laughed again, sharp this time. "Security? That's your story?" She turned to my uncle, palm up in appeal. "Tell him what you told me. The paperwork. Stop," I said softly. She did, not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't. The calm frightened her more than anger. "Whatever conversations you had with anyone about clauses and shares," I said, "were conversations without me. That's enough." Color rose to her cheeks, beautiful and mean. "You're throwing away everything because you eavesdropped on a wedding planner call and misread a few texts? Grow up, Ethan." "Maybe I am," I said. "Growing up is expensive. Today I'm paying for it." Noah stood, hands out as if approaching a skittish animal. "Bro, let's take 5. Different room. The coordinator can—" My mother's voice, small but firm. "Let him finish." She surprised herself saying it. I lowered the ring into Clara's palm. It sat there like a coin whose currency had expired. "You'll be okay," I told her. It wasn't kindness. It was truth. People who plan futures like she does are rarely unprepared for alternate routes. Her hand closed around the ring, knuckles white. She leaned in, whisper venom behind her smile. "If you walk out now, you'll look like a coward who couldn't commit. If I stay," I said, "I'll be a man who couldn't tell the truth." I stepped back. The coordinator tried to clap soft order back into existence. "Okay! Maybe we break for 15, get some water." Clara spun toward the guests, voice turned outward and bright as a stage light. "Everyone please ignore him. He has these moods. We'll sort it and be right back." Murmurs cracked into voices. I heard words like cold feet and misunderstanding and young people. My uncle stood and didn't sit again, forehead pinched with math he hadn't planned to do today. Noah's mouth opened, closed. A bridesmaid started to cry for reasons that had nothing to do with me. Clara grabbed my wrist. Her nails were immaculate. "You don't get to make a scene and then escape." The whisper came ribboned in sugar. "Think about the photos." I looked at her hand on me, then at her face. Somewhere under the makeup, there was a girl who had learned the world by bargaining with it. I wasn't angry at that girl. I just didn't want to marry her. Gently, I freed my wrist. "Clara, this is me not making a scene. This is me leaving before the scene starts." She laughed too loudly. "Then leave," she announced to the room, making a conductor's sweep of her arm as if she'd orchestrated my exit. "All right," I said. I walked down the aisle. My shoes made small, precise sounds on the runner. Tap, 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 the metronome of a decision kept. Faces blurred into a soft gallery of surprise, pity, judgment, relief. My mother stood as I passed. We didn't touch. We didn't need to. Her eyes were wet, but there was something steady in them. Something like finally. At the last row, a little boy in a tiny suit stared up at me as if I were in the wrong movie. I winked. He grinned, the way kids do when someone chooses honesty over plot. At the doors, I paused. It wasn't theatrical. It was breath. I turned once more, not to speak, not to explain, just to remember what the room looked like when I told the truth. Behind me, something clattered. a bouquet slipping from a bridesmaid's hands. It hit the aisle with a hush of petals, a beautiful mess, newly honest. I pushed the doors. They opened with the weighted grace of old wood that had watched 1,000 beginnings and 1,000 endings and didn't judge either. Cool air met me like water meets a swimmer. Outside, the day had shifted brighter, as if someone had slid the exposure up a stop. My lungs opened. First full inhale in months. The exhale tasted like metal leaving blood. Behind me, the quartet faltered, then stopped. Voices swelled and collided, a social storm forming over a pressure drop. Somewhere in that weather, Clara's voice rose, sharp, pleading, then furious, then managerial. Families moved to fix, to explain, to rename. That was their work. Mine was done. I stepped onto the church steps and let the light land on my face. In my pocket, empty now. My hand closed around nothing and found for once that it was enough. A breeze lifted the edge of the runner, a white tongue tasting the threshold. I watched it settle. Then I walked down the stone steps, past the catering truck, past the florist van with its door open like a sigh, past the sign with our names in looping script. A worker, not yet in his black vest, nodded at me the way strangers nod at people doing brave, ordinary things. I nodded back. At the sidewalk, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't need the last image to be proof. It already was. An empty aisle, a dropped bouquet, heavy doors easing shut on a story that had almost learned to tell itself as truth. They closed behind me with a sound like a period finding its sentence. And in the quiet that followed, I finally heard my life make room for a different kind of vow. The morning after the rehearsal that wasn't, the city woke up like it always does. Traffic arguing itself awake, baristas pulling first shots, someone jogging past my building in a neon shirt I'd seen 100 times. The ordinary felt like a rescue boat. I watched it drift by from my window and let it take me. My phone didn't stop. Calls from numbers I recognized and numbers I didn't. Messages piling up like snow, each one insisting theirs was the warmest glove. Talk to her. It's a misunderstanding. You can't throw away a whole future over a feeling. Some came with emojis, some with scripture, some with threats disguised as concern. I learned that the internet can stage a wedding faster than a planner. Overnight, our story was already wearing someone else's version of the truth. I didn't answer anyone. I put the phone face down and boiled eggs, ate them standing up. It felt like a ceremony, the kind that doesn't require applause. By noon, the headlines in our small circle had mutated into a carnival. Groom ghost's bride at rehearsal, cold feet or hidden scandal, all crafted by people who hadn't been in the room or had been there and refused to look. Ryan texted a screenshot of a thread arguing about whether I'd lost my mind. I wrote back, "Don't feed it." He replied with a thumbs up, and then, a minute later, "Proud of you, boss." I didn't realize I'd needed to hear that until my shoulders dropped a fraction. My mother came over with soup. She stood in the doorway looking smaller than yesterday, like courage had borrowed inches from her height and hadn't returned them yet. "Are you eating?" she asked. "I am," I said, lifting the eggs as evidence. She laughed, a sound with a crease in it. "Sit." We sat. We didn't talk about Clara for a long time. We talked about the neighbor's dog that finally had a name, about a new bakery that didn't skimp on butter. When she did say Clara's name, it was soft, like placing a glass on a table. "Do you want me to block her for you?" she asked. I realized then that love is sometimes as small as managing your son's settings. "I've got it," I said. "Thank you." After she left, I opened my contacts and pressed the tiny minus on everything that still gave her a path to me. Calls, texts, socials, email. When the confirmation bubble asked, "Are you sure?" I felt my chest answer before my finger did. Clara tried anyway. She rang the intercom twice that afternoon and 3 times the next day. She left flowers with a note that said, "Let's talk like adults." I returned them to the concierge with a note that said, "Adults respect no." On the 3rd day, a delivery arrived with no signature. Inside, the ring, glinting like an argument. I taped the box shut and slid it into the back of a drawer. Closure doesn't always look ceremonial. Sometimes it looks like packing tape. Work became a clean place to put my hands. I arrived early, left when the cleaning crew asked if I lived there. I pushed projects across finish lines like a man pushing boats into water and then trusting them to float. People watched me the way you watch a friend who's carrying a heavy thing and pretending it's a bag of groceries, ready to grab the other handle. I didn't need them to, but it was nice to know they would. A week later, the London memo resurfaced. My uncle CC'd the executive team with a line that read, "Ethan, reconsider." I walked into his office and said, "No need. I'm in." He studied my face like a weather report, nodded slowly, and said, "You'll like the rain." We both laughed for the first time in days. Preparations moved faster than feelings. HR sent paperwork that smelled like printer toner and second chances. I spent nights translating my apartment into boxes. Books speaking to other books they hadn't met yet. Cups wrapped in shirts that would learn to enjoy tea. A photo album I chose not to open. I sold the couch that had memorized us and kept the lamp that never asked questions. The emptying rooms echoed kindly. Online, the gossip didn't die so much as it got bored. Scandal needs constant feeding. I learned to starve it by living quietly. When people asked for my side, I said, we wanted different things. It was the entire truth without the angles. Some nodded, some frowned. A few tried to repurpose it into a parable about modern relationships and prenups. I let them. I had flights to book. Clara's last attempt arrived as an email from a new address with a subject line that said foreclosure. My cursor hovered over it the way you hover near a door you know opens onto stairs you aren't ready to climb. I deleted it. Closure is not a letter. It's a life you continue. On the day I left, the city was all glass and weather. The airport a symphony of rolling luggage and announcements asking strangers to reconvene. I moved through it with a backpack, a passport, and the kind of silence that feels like a private room. The gate area was filled with people in various stages of saying goodbye to what they were responsible for. I liked them instantly. I bought a coffee I didn't need and found a seat by the window. Outside, a plane taxied like a certainty. I opened my notebook and wrote the first honest to-do list I'd written in months. Breathe. Learn the rain. Build something that outlives this story. Call Mom when I land. When I looked up, she was there. Clara stood at the edge of the boarding crowd, sunlight catching in her hair as if it wanted to forgive her. She looked different without the choreography, no entourage, no agenda in her posture. Just a woman holding a purse with both hands, like it might run away. For a second, the memory of us flickered for the length of a blink. A night market, her laughing with sugar on her lip, my thumb doing the ordinary magic of wiping it away. Nostalgia is a gifted liar. She saw me and crossed the distance in careful steps, as if the floor were late-breaking news. Ethan, she said, and my name sounded like a place she hadn't been allowed to visit. Hi, I said. You can be polite without opening a door. Can we talk? She asked. Just 5 minutes. One more chance. Her voice was softer than I'd heard it in months. The sharp edges sanded down by whatever happens to a person when a mirror stops flattering them. I looked at her the way you look at a painting after the museum lights come on. You still see the art, but you also see the brushstrokes, the places the artist struggled, the fingerprints between colors. She was not a villain. She was a person who had learned to dress need as love and call it romance. There's nothing left to talk about, I said gently. I hope you find what you're looking for. I'm looking at it, she said. And if we were a different story, that would have worked. But love isn't a script you can improvise alone. She reached for my arm, then stopped herself. I made mistakes, she said. I panicked. I wanted to feel safe. I know, I said. But you wanted it more than you wanted me. I didn't say it to punish her. I said it so I wouldn't lie on my last day in this city. Her eyes spilled the kind of tears that want to be both explanation and solution. Please, she whispered. The speakers called pre-boarding for my flight in a calm voice that didn't know it was saving me. People began to line up the way water knows which way to lean. I stood, shouldered my bag, and nodded toward the window. Look, I said. Outside, a small child pressed his palm to the glass to match the wing's curve with his hand. His mother laughed. The sun slid out from behind a cloud like it had been rehearsing this cue. The tarmac turned to silver. I'm not angry anymore, I told her. I just don't belong to that life. It felt like a benediction, for both of us. I walked to the gate without turning back. The scanner beeped that approving little beep it gives everyone, even sinners and saints. The jet bridge hummed with recycled air and second thoughts. Mine were quiet. When I reached the plane door, the flight attendant said, "Welcome," like a person speaking a true word at the right time. I found my seat by the window. The wing outside looked like the promise of a line drawn forward. People shuffled in, filled compartments, negotiated armrests with the diplomacy of strangers in a temporary country. A baby cried, then sighed itself into sleep. The safety video tried its best to be charming. I let it. As the plane pushed back, my phone vibrated with the last signal it would get for hours. I opened the Notes app and typed the final line of this chapter because sometimes you have to hear yourself say it. Some people teach you love. Others teach you boundaries. She taught me both. We turned toward the runway. The engines gathered themselves like a decision. The city tilted. The ground slid. The small houses that had held our almost story reduced to careful squares. I watched the shadow of the plane sprint beside us, a dark twin keeping pace until we lifted and it couldn't follow. We climbed through a layer of cloud that looked like forgiveness. On the other side, the world was an ocean of light. The sun rose a little more, then a little more again, as if it were giving me extra chances just in case. I pressed my forehead to the cool window and let the sound of travel replace the sound of yesterday. The low roar, the occasional ding, the soft rattle of a cart finding its small destinations. Somewhere below, the rehearsal bouquet had already been swept, the doors propped open for the next ceremony, the gossip finding a new meal. Up here there was just sky, and the quiet, stubborn certainty that I had chosen a different kind of vow, the kind you make with yourself and keep. The plane banked east. The light caught the glass just right, and for a heartbeat the window became a mirror. I saw a man I recognized again. I closed my eyes, and the soundtrack in my head finally faded to calm.